What's up, y'all? It's your boy KevOnStage, and I'll be honest, I wrestled with even making this video because I didn't want to be too controversial. Then I realized that's what I do on this channel. I talk about what I'm thinking about, and then we talk about it in the comments. That's what I do. So this is what I want to talk about today. And there's no easy way to put it, but I feel like I was brainwashed growing up in the black church. Mind you, everything I'm talking about is in the description. I tweeted about it this morning. That's why I feel free to talk about it. But the black church had made me think that if you didn't have church the way we did and dress the way we did, worship the way we did, then you weren't saved. Now, mind you, I grew up Pentecostal, Assemblies of the World, PAW. That's Apostolic, for those of you who don't know. That's only one style of black church. Other friends of mine grew up in another style of black church, which has its own sets of things, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the term brainwashing, I know that might make you feel uncomfortable, but this is the definition that I use. To affect a person's mind by using extreme mental pressure or any other mind-affecting process. And that, to me, is what happened. It wasn't necessarily the pastor so much. I mean, it was, but not so much. But it was the culture. I mean, my parents had a big, part to do with it. We grew up strictly apostolic, and we were taught, I remember specifically, we learned about apostolic history, dates and when the church was formed and all that. And I remember a family friend of mine told me, if you're not apostolic, you're not saved. Not if you're not a Christian, if you're not apostolic. That means Kojic people who are also Pentecostal and Christian weren't saved. But if you ain't apostolic, you ain't saved. And I believe that, for a long time, believed that. Matter of fact, I was dating a Kojic girl, and she broke up with me because she said we were unequally yoked. Mind you, both of us are saved, but I was apostolic and she was Kojic, and she was like, I can't do this because you guys are not saved like I'm saved. So this is real belief system for a lot of people. This was all kind of brought up because my wife and I have been going to a predominantly white church for almost a year now, and she wanted to wear jeans, or she wore jeans to church yesterday, and she felt convicted. She was like, I just don't feel right about this. And that's because growing up, you didn't wear jeans. Now, mind you, when I grew up, women didn't wear pants, period. I remember when I was dating Melissa and I went to a Bible study with her after track practice, she was wearing pants, and I was like, you were wearing pants to church? Like, we didn't see women wear pants ever. I'm talking about going to an amusement park wearing a full-length jean skirt. Like, that's not even practical to wear a full-length jean skirt, but they did it, and we were like so hung up on pants and makeup and all that, and it was just, I didn't realize other people didn't think that way. Other churches didn't think that way because we weren't allowed to visit other churches. My mom never let me visit any other church, not my friends, especially no thing that wasn't Christian. I had Catholic friends and stuff growing up. We couldn't go to their church, so I was only accustomed to one style of church, and that was Apostolic Pentecostal church. Nothing else. So I didn't hear everybody all the preachers hooped, and every church had a Hammond B3 organ in there, and we all had service for 2 and 3 hours, and that's all we knew, and we didn't think anybody else did anything else ever. There was no other way to have church. We couldn't do no bowling, no movies, none of that stuff. You weren't supposed to do none of that stuff because it was all the devil. I had friends who couldn't even play cards. I mean, we were allowed to play Uno, but they couldn't even play cards because it was considered Satan. But I realized that a lot of stuff that I was taught was passed off as Bible when it was personal preference. And some of it's my fault because we were discouraged from even having our own thoughts. So I didn't even read my Bible for myself. I just read it to verify, and think what everybody else thought. I didn't have my own thoughts. That was kind of discouraged. Because I remember thinking, you mean to tell me everybody else is going to hell? Like, what if you grew up in China and they don't have an apostolic church there? All them people in China are going to hell? Every Catholic person's going to hell? Everyone? Like, what if you're a good Catholic? What if I grew up white in Boston and I was a Catholic and I believed everything I taught, from my Catholic parents? Am I going to hell? Like, I would have those thoughts and nobody would ever give me an answer. Everything was just pray, just pray. And I remember thinking when I was, a teenager and struggling with sex, I remember saying, hey, what do I do? Because I kind of, been thinking about sex, and they would be like, you pray. And I'm like, okay, I still have a situation down there That's not going away, and I prayed, and I didn't get any guidance. No guidance. Just don't get a girl pregnant. Don't have no baby out of wedlock. That's fine, but how do I like practically not do that? Because she's attractive. I got a situation downstairs. My hormones are raging. The prayer didn't work, and you know, I'm not blaming them for my fault, but it didn't help that I didn't have any guidance in that area. And it's interesting because the white church that we go to, and I really wish I could say something else than white church, but it's not non-denominational, so maybe not predominantly Caucasian non-denominational church. It was so hard for me and Melissa to get used to, because there's no choir, there's no Hammond B3 organ, there's no praise break, and there's no preachers hooping. No, none of that. And to us, that was church. If you didn't have those elements, you didn't have church. If it wasn't 3 hours, then the Spirit didn't move, it ain't church. If the choir didn't squall, it ain't church. If the preacher didn't hoop, and I know a God who walked across the sea, and I know a God who died. If you didn't do that, then you didn't preach. Now, mind you, these preachers at my church are teaching, I mean, the most biblically sound, practical messages ever. One of the best messages I heard recently was, you can say a simple prayer. I just remember it specifically because the guy was just saying, I was going through stuff and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I remember saying to God, I'm really frustrated. He was talking about he was upset because his kids were playing sports and he didn't feel like he was a good enough father to teach. You know, his kids sucked at sports and he felt like it was his fault. And he was like, that's a dumb thing to pray for, but I prayed anyway. And he said, you know, God, I kind of feel, you know, dumb about that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he said, God, you know, he kind of felt that God was just like, just relax. Okay, you're being a father, you're being active in their life, just relax. So I was like, man, that's really cool. And when we were searching for a house, I was getting really frustrated because everything I was spending like all day for weeks searching for places and going to visit them. And I was showing to Melissa and she wouldn't like them. And I was like really getting mad because I was spending all this time going to properties that were trash or whatever, or the people wouldn't show up. And everyone that I liked, she didn't like. So I applied that message. I said, God, this process is getting really frustrating for me, and I don't want to cause, you know, any strife in my marriage, but I'm really getting mad about this and I can't seem to have any luck. If you could just help us find a place that we both agree on, I would be really happy about that. Literally that week, we found a place that we both agreed upon, and I remember telling you, it was like literally the next day, I'm not even kidding you, it was like the Monday after the Sunday. And Melissa laughed. I was like, you see that prayer message he said? That came in handy. And we laughed because we, you know, talked about the fact that, you know, just because this style of church is different doesn't make it wrong. And that's really the point that I'm making. I was taught that everything that we do is right and everybody else is wrong and not saved. And that's not true. You have a variety of things, a variety of ways you can worship God and all that and be right. And everybody who goes to a different church isn't necessarily wrong. Just because your church is 3 hours doesn't make it right. Just because your church is 1 hour doesn't make it right. It's all about preference, and that goes down to even stuff in the Bible, man. I promise you, I spent my whole life just convicting everybody else and all that stuff until I read Romans 14. I suggest today or whenever, read Romans 14 in the Message Bible version, because it changed my life. I was like, literally changed the way I thought. I'm going to just share these two with you. Romans 14 verse 13 and 14. Forget about deciding what's right for each other. Here's what you need to be concerned about, that you don't get in the way of someone else, making life more difficult than it already is. I'm convinced, Jesus convinced me, that everything as it is in itself is holy. We, of course, by the way we treat it, talk about it, can contaminate it. If you confuse others by making a big issue over what they eat or don't eat, you're no longer a companion with them in love, are you? These, remember, are persons for whom Christ died. Would you risk sending them to hell over an item in their diet? Don't you dare let a piece of God-blessed food become an occasion of soul poison. And he was talking about people who didn't want to eat meat and eat meat that chewed the cud and all that stuff. But it really boils down to a lot of other stuff. We just condemn everybody for music choices and this and what they can do and what they can't do. And Paul goes on to say, you have a hard enough time living your life according to your own principles. How dare you try to hold somebody else to their principles when you can't even hold yourself to yours? And that was like, blew my mind away, because I used to do comedy in clubs, and I was the type of person that could go to a comedy club, perform, not have a drink, and go home. Other people couldn't do that, and that's okay. But they don't need to condemn me for what I can do, and I don't need to condemn them for what they can do. Like, I listen to rap music, but I only listen to clean version because too much cussing vexes me. me. Like Drake's Worst Behavior, the unedited version, I'm just like, that's just too much cussing. But friends of mine, doesn't bother them. Rated R movies bother some people, don't bother me. I watched Wolf of Wall Street yesterday and I wasn't convicted, and other people are, and that's fine. And if I know you have a problem with rated R movies, then I won't suggest we go see Wolf of Wall Street, because I know that doesn't bother me, but it bothers you. So we'll go see Frozen or whatever. And that's really what Paul was talking about. You know, we are all in love and trying to get each other, you know, we should be working together as opposed to trying to nitpick on all the stuff that doesn't matter. And, you know, that's kind of how I felt about that. And my last point is, it reminded me of how the church is versus the gay people. You know, we are very attacky, aggressive to gay people. And I remember when I was teaching Bible study with my teens in Washington, we had a gay dude. He was, you know, he didn't overtly come out, but we pretty much knew he was gay. And he came, you know, a lot, almost for a year, over a year. And, you know, I preached and taught, and I taught about homosexuality when it was the time to talk about homosexuality, talked about drugs, whatever the case of the message was. I didn't stray from it or nothing. And when we talked about stuff that might hit him home, he stayed. And when stuff hit the other kids, they stayed or whatever. And he was doing good. The word was working on him. And then one day a deacon at the church cornered him and was like, what you doing in here? You gay, ain't you? You a little sissy boy. What you doing in this church? You don't even like no girls. And he never came back to church. The kid, I never saw him again at church. And one time I saw him, you know, at a high school game, one of the kids was playing out and I was there. And he was like, I just can't do it. I can't go to that church anymore because of the way that people, you know, talked about me and made me feel. And that's really the truth. Like, I don't know how we can, you know, reach any gay people when they can't get in the, you know, service without all the side eyes. You know, it's hard to even get in. So, and I just realized that, you know, my feelings on gayness and all that changed substantially when I had kids. Like, I had 2 boys and I realized there's nothing they can do that would make me disown them. Like, I learned about unconditional love from having kids, and I realized that if I love my kids this much, God has to love us that much or more. Which brings me to another point. The reason we can't expect everybody else to have our relationship is because they're not the same person. I have 2 kids and I can't even raise them 2 the same. The stuff that worked for Zay doesn't work for JoJo. The stuff that worked for JoJo doesn't work for Zay. One will cry if I do this, whatever. So God has billions of kids. How can we expect each one of us to follow the same exact rules and live the same exact ways when we don't have the same experiences? So I know this video is kind of all over the place. These are really just my thoughts, not even put into, you know, coherent things all the time. But the point that I'm making is the church you grow up in or the church you attend is just your preference. And the way you live your life is your preference. If we all agree that we love God and want to live for Him and follow the principles of the Bible and just love each other more, like just use love. Like I found that more people come to the gospel and come to church when you show love first than any other way. Like, if you come to them and here's a list of rules, stuff you can't do, but God will be there. That's not as enticing as saying, man, God loves you no matter what, and I love you. That's more of I can deal with that more. And then let the word do its work. Let the word work on the person's heart. Let God work on them. But let them know that they feel loved, welcome, and safe, and see how that goes. So it's your boy KevOnStage. More videos later. But this is what I couldn't do another video until I got this out. So also the whole store is free shipping when you buy 2 or more items starting tomorrow. So let that be a blessing, and I'll see you tomorrow.
What's up, everybody? It's KevOnStage. Go subscribe to my YouTube page, and don't you be bitter. Just follow me on Twitter. What's up, everybody? It's KevOnStage. Go subscribe to my YouTube page, and don't you be bitter.